Okay, so let's start. Hi, everyone. What we're gonna do basically, what I think is hopefully gonna be a very exciting class. It's basically what we're gonna talk about today. The theme of today is we're gonna see how David is able, tries and is able to unify the Malchut. Because when Shaul dies, it's not a simple like, hooray, now you're gonna be king. Um, last lesson last week we spoke about how the people of Hebron, David's city, the Shevet of Yehuda, well, no, David's from Bethlehem, sorry, but David's Shevet in Hebron, they anoint him king. But now we're going to see how slowly over this lecture tonight, over this lesson, we're going to see how he becomes a full king over all the nation, and it's not going to be simple. We're going to see there are a couple things standing in his way. Two of those major things are, well, they're really not things, they're people. Two people standing in his way. One is Avner ben Ner, who we already met, right? The general, the Sarsava of Shaul, who did not die in the battle with Shaul. He's still alive, and he's going to cause a lot of structural problems. And we're going to see also Yoav ben Sruya, the general of David, is also going to cause him some problems. We're going to see what happens. We're going to see David is able to overcome this. And by the end of this lesson, we will get to the point where he unifies his nation. However, spoiler, it's not going to last for so long. So we're going to start off with the fact that, hold on, let me show you some, let's share the screen. We're going to start off with the fact that we're having two simultaneous malchuts going at this point. We're going to see that the malchut of David starts essentially the way that Sefer Malachim ends, with Yehuda and Israel. Okay, so I did two. Hold on, yeah, I did two parallel things here. We see that. Yeah, is that better? Do you see? Okay. Well, now I'm blocking the picture. Hold on, I'll move that. Okay. We see that if we remember, after the whole thing with the Nad Amaleki that comes to tell that Shaul died and David kills him. He does the kinaf, all that. Now we see David asks God, where should I go? And again, we always see David asks God, or maybe we didn't speak about this last because I brought it here, I forgot. But David asks God, where should I go? Always, David is always asking for God's guidance. We see that as a theme throughout his life. And God tells him, go up to Hebron, and that's where Bet Yehuda is anointing him. At the same time, we see parallel to this, Avner ben Ner, who's the general of Shaul. He takes Ishboshet and he brings him to Machanaim, and he makes him king over all the areas. It says Bagalad, Ashura, Israel, Ephraim, Binyamin, on all the other, basically a large portion, if not all the other parts. And we're going to see that. I know that this is the way I sort of envision it when I read this story, is that it's sort of like, if anyone saw the Aladdin movie, I feel like the Avner and Ishboshet thing is very much like Jafar and the Sultan. Avner is going to be running everything. He has a very, very strong personality, physically and, I don't want to say emotionally, but just his whole persona is very strong. He's a warrior, but he's also a very strong presence and influential. That's what I'm looking for. He's very influential. And he's going to be the one that's running the show behind Ishboshet. He is part of Shaul's family. However, he is not his son. So he knows he's his nephew. So he knows that he himself will not take the rulership, but he's basically using Ishboshet as a puppet king at this point, this whole time. And so we see how there's going to be this division under Ishboshet, which is essentially under Avner and David. Okay, we're going to see that division. And David's goal, we're going to see, is going to be trying to unite the nation in a peaceful manner. Okay, his goal is going to be a peaceful manner, and we're going to see how that's going to be challenged. So we see now David is sending melachim messengers to Anshe Avesh Gilad. If we remember, they're very prominent people on the side of Binyamin and the side of David. That Shaul helps them in the war of Nachash. They take Shaul and his son's bodies and bury them respectfully when the Pelishtim defiled them. And now it seems like they're like the David's people, and because of that, Shaul's people, and David sends to them and says, listen, I want you, because you did a chesed with Shaul and his sons after he died, I want to do a chesed with you, and let's make peace. We're not going to have a war now. Let's unite the nation. And David's thinking on two levels here. He's thinking, one, politically, in the sense that these are Shaul's biggest supporters. So if I get them on my side politically, everyone else will follow, right? Like it's political move. But also we do see it's the idea of building chesed, kindness, as a foundation of his malchut. And we will see this is something that is common through his leadership, through David's leadership, his need and ability to do chesed for the people and for the nation around the nation he is leading. So it's very interesting, actually, that we don't get an answer from them. It ends with, he asks them, and you were so loyal to Shaul. Now I'm the king. Come be loyal to me. And then it ends there, because he says, Bet Yehuda, Bet Yehuda lemelech alehem, that Bet Yehuda made me king. Come join us. And then we don't have an answer from them. So we're assuming that the no answer didn't mean no. However, it takes us to the more important, I don't want to say more important, but the more critical, I would say, part of the story of why really the nation's not unified. Because David, like I said, is trying to do it peacefully. However, we're going to see Avner and Yoav, the two generals, are going to cause a very big friction that will not allow the unity to happen peacefully at this time. For a little bit more time, basically. So Avner and I didn't bring the pasuk, but Avner and Yoav are sitting by the brecha in Givon. Okay, and it's very crucial, because Givon is a city of Binyamin. So the commentators do sort of lean towards the fact that Yoav coming there is a sign of assertion and a sign of trying to like make a dig and start something with Avner. And we see the question is, why is he doing this? And we see that it seems that at this point it is found that the Mishkan is in Givon. Because if you remember, it was in Shiloh, and that with Eli and his son, that was destroyed. Then it goes to Nov, Yerakonim, which Shaul destroys, and now it seems now we're here. We're in Givon. So it seems that Yoav from the side of David is coming in to establish authority in Givon, showing we want to take the religious center and the religious connection over here in the city and take part in it and control it. So and then while that's happening, they're sitting there. Avner tells, well, this is all assumption and all undertone. It's nothing. None of what I just said is set out, right? It's all learned and studied through the action. So Avner and Yoav are sitting there, okay, and they're with their respective armies, and it's because it was sort of looked at as an act of war. Avner tells Yoav, let's pick some na'arim, some young soldiers, and let them sachakul fanenu, meaning let them fight in front of us. And it seems a little odd, like, was this just for their pleasure? But it does seem that so too, if we remember in the Goliath war, and David, and he says, send one person to fight me, and whoever wins will be the winner. It seems that that Avner was sort of playing at that will have our Nadim fighting, and we won't have to do a full out blown out war. Whoever wins that that little battle, then that counts as that will win, and we'll move on from there. So they both send 12 people, and ironically, or whatever, however you want to call it, they each kill each other, and it's a draw. They all die. And this is actually criticism on Avner and Yoav, that they looked very lightly on the lives of their soldiers, and this wasn't the right thing that should have been done. So this act, this undertone, this act of the undertone of Yoav coming in, and the outright act of Avner initiating this little skirmish, starts out a full-out war. It's a very strong war. So before we get any details of the war, it tells us there's a war, and Avner and the people of Israel, get demolished in front of the people, by the people of David. And then we zoom into the actions of what actually happened in the war, which will be significant. So we get introduced again, which we already met them, but we're introduced again because it's going to be very crucial, to the Shloshet Bnei Seruya, Yoav, Avishai, and Asael. Okay, the three brothers, Yoav, Avishai, and Asael. We already know about Yoav and Avishai from previous stories with David, and his army and his chase and his flight from Shaul. Asael, we don't necessarily know so much about. It tells us he's Kal Beraglav. He's very quick. He's like a deer. He's very skilled. He's very fast. And then zoning us into an instance in the war that Asael is running after Avner. He has a lot of confidence in himself. And he says, I'm going to go kill Avner, with the motive in his head of thinking, if I kill Avner, the general, the leader, this is going to stop the war. And he's running after Avner. And it says, Lo natal alechet al hayamin or al hasmol mechare Avner. He's cornering him. He's on his back, and they're both running. And we see through what's going to happen now is that Asael overestimates himself, and Asael underestimates the strength of Avner, because we're going to see, as we know from before, he is a very, very strong warrior and a very skilled warrior also. So Avner, he tells Asael, he says, please, you're chasing me. I don't want to have to kill you. And because he said he knows, he's justified in killing him because he tried to take his life. This is a classic rodef. Someone who's pursuing you, you're allowed to kill them. And Avner says, please go right, go left, go, kill some other soldier to not embarrass yourself. Don't kill me, because don't make me kill you, because how am I going to look at your brother Yoav after this, right? How can I come forward in front of Yoav after killing his brother? And Asael, he doesn't want. We see Avner does not want to do this. He tries to give Asael a way out. Asael is stubborn and does not take it. And Avner, which is a little graphic, but it just shows you the strength of Avner and the ability of a soldier that he had, is he took his spear, and he not with the front of the spear, with the back of the spear, he took it and holstered it back into Asael, into his, it says El HaChomesh, under his ribs, like in on the side, in a very weak spot that he was able to get very quickly and swiftly and strong, and with strength, and he kills him that way. And then we see that this is, we see that Avner and that Yoav and Avishai do not know this yet, and they go and they're fighting, and they continue fighting, and Avner is losing, and he calls out to wrong way, 1 second. He calls out to no, wait, where did I go? 1 second. No. Did I not bring it? Here. Oh no, I didn't bring. Okay. He tells him, okay, he's sorry, I don't know why I didn't bring it. He calls out and he says, here in the green, okay. He tells him, are we forever going to be fighting and fighting like this? Let's call it off. And Yoav says, hey, you're the one who started this. And then he says, no, let's stop. And he blows the shofar, and he ends the war. Yoav ends the war. So it does seem that Avner started it, but like we said, Yoav being there was an initiating factor as well. Then we see that Yoav, when they I didn't bring the psukim, but Yoav sees that Asael, his brother, is killed, and he's fuming about this, obviously. And we see also the discrepancy in numbers. There was very few of David's people that were killed, and there was a ton of Avner's people and the Shaul side of Avner and Ishbosheth that was killed. If I remember correctly, I think it was like 19 or 20 on Shaul's side and like 300 something on David's side and 300 something on Shaul's side. So it was a big loss for Shaul. And a lot of this is placed on not all of it is placed on Yoav and Avner's feuding. And we see that this is going to be a big theme here of David's view of doing things in a peaceful manner versus Yoav and the Bnei Seruya, Yoav and Avishai doing things in a more forceful manner. And we're going to see very quickly how the Bnei Seruya, Yoav and Avishai, are going to cause David their intensity and their quickness to react is going to cause David a lot of problems. So we have this pasuk, "Vatiyam Machama Arukha ben Bet Shaul bet David, David holech v'chazek, or Bet Shaul holech v'dalim." Okay, the war is getting stronger and stronger between the two sides, and David is getting stronger and stronger, and Shaul is weak. Shaul's side is weakening and weakening. Now we see that it also interjects here that David had children in Hebron, and his oldest is Amnon, Lachinom Israeli, and then it lists all his sons. Now, this might seem a little bit like random, like why are we throwing this in now? But it's really not random because it's showing us that at this point, during his, even though he was only ruling in Hebron, he was establishing himself. He was establishing his lineage, his continuity. He has an heir. He has, the crown prince is Amnon, who's going to come up later. Very important. Don't forget him. And he's a very, very important character. So this is basically, even though it seems a little bit random, it's showing us his stability and continuity that he's establishing in his malchut, even though he's only king on over Hebron at this point. Now we have a very interesting story again with the characters of Shaul of Avner. Excuse me. And we have Avner's character again showing his strength and assertion. Is we see that Shaul has, we get this information that Shaul has a Pilegesh named Tzpa bat Ayah. He's a concubine named Tzpa bat Ayah. And if you look at the Hebrew, if you could read the Hebrew or listen to the Hebrew, I'll translate. But it says Shaul Pilegesh ushma Tzpa bat Ayah vayomer al Avner madua bata el Pilegesh avi. And it doesn't say a name. It doesn't say anything. It says vayomer. He said. Who's he? Ishboshet, right? But it's showing that he doesn't even have the text isn't even giving him significance by giving his name, because Avner is really the one running the show. And he says, "Why did you go and be with my the Pilegesh of my father?" And Avner, he doesn't deny it, but he gets furious, and this accusation snowballs him totally leaving Ishboshet, because what he says is. It says, me'od al divrei Ishboshet, and he says, Harosh kelev anochi, am I a dog? That I'm doing a chesed with you, and that I'm the one that's ruling this. I'm gonna leave. He says, okay, I'm swearing that what God said to David, he's gonna be king. I'm gonna go help him. He says, I'm going to go unify this malchut with David. I'm done with you. How dare you basically not realize the terms of our negotiation, right? Avner is basically saying, you didn't realize, are you not realizing what's going on here? I am the one running the show. I'm the one giving you the ability that to have your own malchut, your independence from David, and now you're insulting me by telling me that I shouldn't have been with the Pilegesh of your father. I am essentially the king. I could be with whoever I want to be, is what he's sort of saying here. So this is like the nail on the hammer that Avner says, the nail, the nail in the coffin, that Avner says, I'm done with you and I'm leaving you and I'm going to go make a brit with David. And Ishboshet doesn't know what to say. He has no response. He's so afraid of Avner that he has no response. And Avner then goes out and tries to and wants to make a brit with David. And David wants this because David's saying, "Yay, we could finally make a peaceful unity, and we won't have to have a war. We'll make a brit." But he says one thing that David is not gonna let go is one thing. לא תירץ פניי כי אם לפני אביך את מיכל בת שאול בבואך לראות את פניי. Do not come until you bring Michal, the daughter of Shaul, to me. Now, if you remember when we spoke about this way back when he married her, David and Michal have a very complicated relationship. It's a one-sided love. She loves him. The whole time, if you remember when we spoke about their marriage, she was loving him. He only wanted to marry into the family of into the monarchy, into the family of Shaul, and it was a very complicated marriage. But so it doesn't seem here like David's like, oh, I miss my wife, I want to be with her. No, he wants Michal bat Shaul, right? He wants the daughter of Shaul. He also sees this as a political move to say, okay, this is going to show unity if I retake her as my wife. And it's very interesting because I didn't bring the Sukkim, but Avner does bring her. And she's bringing he brings her. He was given by Shaul she was given by Shaul to Palti ben Laish, and it says he was crying as he gave her over to David. It seems like that they might have had some sort of decent relationship, that he did care about her at least. But now she goes with David, and we're going to see even from now on later when we meet them again at different points in their marriage. It's not simple and very complicated, and they don't really see eye to eye. We'll see that later when David, a very important story, when David brings up the Aron, how she disagrees with him. So now Avner comes, they make this brit, and it repeats the word shalom, shalom, shalom. Avner is genuine. Avner does want to bring peace. He does want to unite with David. He was essentially the one stopping the Malchut from being united, because if he didn't do anything, Ishbosheth didn't have the strength. He wasn't going to be able to stand up to David without Avner's strength. As we see, once Avner leaves him, he's done. So Avner is making that transition, and then he leaves, and Yoav and his people come, and they weren't at this meeting apparently. And Yoav finds out what happened, and Yoav says to David, me asita hine ba Avner elecha lama ze shalachani vayelech haloch yadata et Avner benet ki leftotecha ba uledat et motzaecha ve'et mevoecha ladat et kol asher ata oseh. He accuses Avner of being a spy. He says Avner does not have good motives. He doesn't really want to do this, and we'll see that this isn't really Avner's real feeling, because what happens next is Yoav leaves, and it's very interesting because, well, I'll go back in a second. Yoav leaves, and it says David lo yadai. David doesn't know that Yoav leaves to follow Avner, right? And David doesn't know he's following Avner. And Yoav goes to follow Avner. He corners him, and he kills him. And interesting poetic justice. Vayakeu sham hachomesh. He stabs him under the chomesh, under the fifth rib, in that vulnerable area, and he dies. And it says Vayemot bedam Asael achiv. He dies on the blood of his brother Asael, because of his brother Asael. And so we see from this, is from the narrator, from the text and the narrator telling us that when he killed him, his motives were revenge for his brother. They weren't pure motives of protecting the Malchut of David. He was doing this as revenge. And when this happens, we see it's a big problem for David, because imagine you're the nation, right? Imagine you're the people, and you hear this. It seems very likely that David sent Yoav to do his bidding, or at least approved of Yoav doing this and killing Avner, and that's going to be the way to unify. Because if we weren't already studying David's character and knowing that he was a man of more of a man of peace and not of fighting, not of attacking Shaul's family, we might think that this is something he would do. However, it isn't, and David has to do a lot of work to prove to the nation that he did not have any part in this. And the first, and we'll see now, we're going to see what he goes through, because it's not simple. Yoav here almost cost David the love of the people and the Malchut, because if David it wasn't able to successfully convince the people that he didn't have a part in this, it could have ended very differently. But luckily, he is able to express that. And what does he do to that? To convince the people, He says, Naki anochi u'melachti me'im Hashem al haolam midmei Avner ben. We are clean. I am clean from the death of Avner, and it is Yachulu al Rosh Yoav. It's called Bet Aviv. It's on Yoav's hands, and he curses Yoav. He says there should be people in Yoav's family that are zav or mitzorah, that are lepers, machazik b'pelech, that have to use a cane, that can't stand upright, nofel b'cherev, that die in war, v'chaser lechem, that go hungry. He gives them a very strong curse. Now, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but I read something very interesting, that all these things that he curses happen to different kings and descendants of David. So it's very interesting to show that there is a little bit of fault of David, even though he didn't actually do it. The fact that he didn't reprimand Yoav and tell him no, he just says, when we finished the story before, it just tells him that after Yoav gets angry about it and tells him Avner's tricking you, it doesn't say that anything David responded. So there is a little bit of shtika kehoda'ah, that there's this saying that when I'm silent, I'm agreeing. So there is this little bit of guilt on the side of David. So maybe that's also interesting to see that these punishments do happen to people in his if his descendants. But that's just something interesting as a side point. And he says, they were the ones who killed him, because Avner killed Asael, their brother. And David tells Yoav and all the nation, he does an excessive mourning. They rip their clothes, they wear, they wear clothes of mourning, and they do eulogies. And the David walks with the not the coffin, it's him on his deathbed. And David's there in the front lines of this mourning, showing everyone publicly how he is, mourning this and not a part of this. They bury Avner in Hebron, and David's crying, and he does the kinah, v'yikonen hamelech el Avner. He makes Vayomer hakemot naval yamut Avner. Avner's gonna have such a horrible death, like a nobody. And the nation the people try to give him food, and he says, no, I'm fasting. I'm not eating anything till the sunset. I'm fasting. And because of all these things, because of all this show that he does, if you want to say it's show, if you want to say it's real, I mean, I personally feel like it is real. I do think that David genuinely did want unity and peace, in a less forceful way. But the people do take it, and we're going to see that not everyone fully goes by it. We're going to see in a second what happens to Ishbosheth. But David says, Anochi hayom rach u'mashuach, I am newly anointed, I'm young, rach is like young. Vanashim ha'ele b'nei Sruya, these b'nei Sruya kashim mimeni, they're tough for me. Yishalem Hashem le'oseh hara'a kerato. He realizes now, and we're going to see this through his malchut. I didn't bring so many examples because it's a lot, but we're going to see through his malchut through different circumstances in his malchut, with rebellions and with anyone who's against David. Yoav and Abishai are the ones that are like, let's go, let's kill him, let's assert our authority. And David is not passive. David is a warrior. We can't forget that. However, he does things in a more, I want to say maybe politically correct way, in a more way of chesed, in a more thought out way, in a more reserved way, planned way, patient way than the Bnei Sruya. And I'm just going to fast forward. When David dies, he tells Shlomo to find a way to kill Yoav and to get rid of Yoav, and Shemuel gets Yoav killed. And at that point, we see that the Malchut is so established that he doesn't need the Bnei Sruya now. Because if David would have killed or exiled or whatever, any extreme way punished the Bnei Sruya, he needed them to strengthen his Malchut. And he knew that. He's saying this right now. I know that. And he's saying God's gonna give them what they deserve. And in the end, God gives them what they deserve in the form of his son Shemuel, when he's established, taking revenge for him. Now we get to Vayishma. We go back now. Okay, so now before we go, Avner is dead. Avner was running the whole show for Ishboshet. So now it says Vayishma ben Shaul, which is Ishboshet, right? Again, we're not naming him; he's so insignificant. He met Avner. That Avner died. And now they're all shaking in their boots, basically. And why are they shaking? Because they might also think that David was part of this, and they might also fear that David's going to come and give them retribution. And they also know that without Avner, they don't have any leg to stand on, right? So they're really, really nervous, and rightfully so, because we'll see what happens. Then we meet these two people. Sareg Dudim Hayu ben Shaul Sham Achad Bana Beshem Hasheni Rechab. בני רימון הבארותים מבני בנימין כי גם בארות תחשב על בנימין ויברחו הבארותים גיתיימה והיו שם גרים עד היום הזה. There were these two guys, two brothers that were part of David's head of his battalions, his, groups of his soldiers, and they were named Rechav Ubana. They're bnei Rimon habe'erotim. They're from Be'erot, and it's very interesting. There's different interpretations of where they were from. Were they part of Binyamin? If because they were from Be'erot. Then there's other sources that say this was a Givoni city, so maybe they were Givonim. And why were the Givonim in Shaul's army? Because the Givonim, as any other, David was in Achisha's army. There's precedent for other people, other nations taking on people in their army from other nations, and we see they ran away. Maybe after Shaul died, or the fact that we'll find out later Shaul massacred a bunch of Givonim. Maybe they were scared after that and they ran away. We don't really know exactly. There's a lot of different opinions of what they were, who they were, whatever it may be. And if this what they're going to do now is a personal vendetta or is trying to gain favor of David. Either way, look what happens. So we meet these two guys, these two brothers, and then we have an interesting pasuk which we'll come back to in a second. Well, actually, no, I'll talk about this now. We introduce two brothers, Rechav Ubana, and then we meet. It talks about Yonatan ben Shaul ben Neche Raglayim. He has a crippled son. Yonatan has the son of Shaul. Shaul has a crippled son. He was 5 years old when the whole war happened, and Shaul and Yonatan and his other sons died. And his nanny was running with him, and because she was running so fast, they fell, and he became crippled. He became paralyzed, and his name was Mephibosheth. So this seems like a little bit of a random pasuk, but we will see that, spoiler, the Rechav Ubana are going to go kill Ishboshet. Now we're going to see exactly what happens, but they go and kill Ishboshet. So this pasuk is actually trying to show us why they felt the need to kill Ishboshet, because they feel the need. They realize that Ishboshet, even though he's not strong, he's not a cripple, right? He's still able to be somewhat of a leader. And once he's dead, if the only living descendant of Shaul's lineage is a cripple, he's not going to be able to be a king. They don't think he's going to be suitable to be king. So they feel like if we do this, David's Malchut will fully be unified. And they go, Rechav Ubana, Kechom Hayom, in the middle of the day when Ishboshet is taking his, siesta, his nap, and they go and kill him while he's, again, this theme of the Chomesh, of killing in that part of the body. And they kill him, and they cut off his head, and they bring his head to David. Now, again, we see the theme of bringing the head, right? We see that with Goliath. We see that with the Plishtim, after with Shaul and Yonatan and the sons' head that they were passing around the sign of victory. He's bringing his head. The two brothers bring the head to David as a sign of, look what we did. Look at this. And now they bring it now. By the way, the point of the Givonim, by the way, was this a personal revenge on Shaul's family because he massacred Givonim? We don't really, could be, or it could just be, not just be, but or it could also be finding favor in David and trying to find favor in David and unify his malchut again in a very active, violent way. They bring the head to Shaul, to David, expecting, obviously a reward, whatever. And David says, really, like, what is with you? Did you not see what I did to the Nad who told me that Shaul died? That I did not see that I killed him? you went and you killed an innocent man in his bed. Like, this is not something I'm gonna praise you for. You are worthy of death. And he actually kills them, and he does it, and he defiles their bodies. It says, he cuts off his hands and his feet, and he hangs them by the Becha and Hebron to make a symbol of them. Now, I said before that some of the people might have thought that David was that not fully bought into the fact that David was clean from Avner's hands, and they might have thought, oh, he was involved a little bit in Avner, and now I'm going to kill Ishbosheth, and it'll all be great for David. But they're not realizing that this is not what David wants. But regardless of it's not the way he wants it, this is how it finally ultimately unifies the Malchut. And it says, "Vayevosh et kol shavtei Yisrael el David Chevrona, hinenu vayomru lo, hinenu atzmenu b'sarenu ata, you're one of us." They all come and say, you're one of us. Even before, when Shaul was running after you, and Shaul was the king, you were always fighting for us. You were always defending us, right? And they tell him, now we're going to anoint you king. David lemelech al Israel. And they anoint him king over all of Israel. And we see Ben Shloshim Shana David b'Malcho, Arba'im Shana Malach. He was 30 years. He was king for 40. He was 30 years when this happened. He was 40 years. Hebron Malach al Yehuda Sheva Shanim. He was king in Hebron for 7 years. So you have to realize 7 years was the civil war. It was 7 years of civil war, of Avner, of Ishbosheth, of all these things going on, of Yoav and Abishai, and all this drama going on. And now he goes to Yerushalayim, Malach Shoshim. Now he's going to go be king in Yerushalayim for 33 years on all Israel. So I want to see, we'll end here, and we'll tie it all up in showing that David now ends as a unified king over Israel. And we're going to see what happens next. Is he wants to fully capture Yerushalayim, wants to fully establish the bring the Aron and all these things, and really establish his Malchut. And we see that this, like I said in the beginning, this happens in a way that wasn't necessarily exactly how he wanted it. And we see the theme here, and we're going to see it continue through his Malchut, is David. And before, we saw also with his running away from Shaul, is David is a man of patience. David is a man who realizes that when something is yours, you have to be patient and do what you can, but you don't need to overly manipulate the situation. You don't need to do it in a not clean type of way. And that's how we see Yoav and the Bnei Rimon, and how they're sort of manipulating the situation. And David is not on board with this. So, but at the same time, he's not able to fully assert that yet, because his monarchy is still young. So we're going to see now that David is finally king over all of Israel. And now we're going to see a little bit of the drama in his own family, in his own cabinet, and how that's all going to play out. Because we see David is a man of the people, but a lot of time the man of the people will have problems in their own personal life. And we're going to see how this all plays out through his leadership and his lineage. So thank you for coming. And if there's any questions or comments, happy to take.